Hello and welcome to Digital Transformation and AI for Humans with your host, Emi. In this podcast, we delve into how technology intersects with leadership, innovation, and most importantly, the human spirit. Each episode features visionary leaders who understand that at the heart of success is the human touch, nurturing a winning mindset, fostering emotional intelligence, and building resilient teams. Today, we are going to reveal the secrets behind scaling tech startups. Edward Golod, an American living in New York, founder and CEO of Revenue Accelerators, technology sales expert who leveraged over 265 million US dollars in closed enterprise sales, helping tech startups and advanced manufacturers secure enterprise clients, is my fantastic guest today. Welcome, Edward. It's great to have you in the studio.
Good morning and good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
I'm so happy that we are going to have this conversation. I'm so looking forward to it. And to start, could you tell a few words about yourself, about your journey? Please share with us your story.
Wow, thank you very much. So, my story is unusual I call it a triad approach. Even as a young entrepreneur, I got early into technology, very early, 80s, 90s. And when I got into technology, I decided to get into technology that would be massive and would be transformational. So early on, I got into very large scale mainframe sales, and I was doing sales in literally the Fortune 100. It was Visa, MasterCard, IBM, the CIA. And from that, I learned more than I sold. And I learned everything there was to know about enterprise and how they operate. And I ended up starting a business out of that career. I was number one for a public company that was doing about 30 million out of 30 reps, and I quit. I guess that's what we do sometimes when you're an early entrepreneur. And I came up with this premise based on a problem that in hundreds and thousands of computer centers that are running all major corporations, there was no central control room or control area. I didn't know why they didn't have that. You would spend 8 million on a mainframe and you had 10 of them. Why would the control rooms look like where your mother would play cards with her friends sitting in a room on a table? So I took the concept of NASA command and control, and I said, I'm going to build those rooms for the Fortune 100. And I built that up to about 560, 70 people. We started doing early on about 10, 12 million. I actually started that with $10,000 from my father, who had no money but $10,000. It was brutal to take money from him, and I ended up supporting him and paying him back many times over. And that company eventually grew to 40 million. In that story, I was able to connect to hundreds and hundreds of C-suite across every sector. And I ran that for about 16, 17 years and then exited that business. And that was the beginning of my first triad. So I knew everything there was to know about high-tech running of complex data centers, software predominantly, and hardware for big companies. Where do you go at that point? You're a founder. Nobody wants a founder. They want someone to sell for them. So I said, well, let me go complete my triad and get more experience, except let me get it in emerging technology. And that led me to actually making a cold call from a newspaper. And I called up Microsoft, and they had a division that was doing breaking the country and the world in 3D animation. And I interviewed for that, and they said I'm totally unqualified. They don't want an owner. I knew nothing about 3D. I couldn't even use a laptop at that point. I was back in the, I guess, late 80s, 90s. And I became number one for 4 years in a row in the entire world and made deep, deep friends and deep connections. And that software later went on to create Jurassic Park and all the films. I didn't love the industry, but I loved working for Microsoft. And I knew that if I stayed on that path, I could stay in technology and become a thought leader. So that journey then led me to create another business, because when you're an entrepreneur and it burns inside your belly, it's a flame you just don't extinguish. So while I'm at Microsoft, I started to create software for Wall Street on development work, and I built a very unique business a second time on working with Wall Street and then training developers, but then using the training from the developers to go back into the business. And I did a few $1 million at Lehman, and I didn't love development work, but I was really enthused in starting another business. And then from that, um, I then ran that with a partner who went on later on for, I don't know, 18 years. He sold it for 70 million. I got out early, and I said, well, what do I do now? I said, well, I better get some more technology. See, the thing that I learned in life is that if you're in technology and you're not running fast, you're going to run off the track, and that's the end of you. So here I am now, and I'm in my upper 40s, and it's like, well, what do I learn now? And I said, well, analytics is coming in big. I better learn that. So I got a job at SAS Institute, and I started selling deep analytics. And it was worth taking that job just to learn what I learned. And then from SAS, I started to migrate up into startups because I didn't know startups. So I said, well, I better reinvent myself and learn how to work at a startup. So I got involved with a double Stanford master's brilliant man who had a startup that fit in a school bus. And I interviewed for it, and they flew me out to Seattle, which was great because, I used to work at Microsoft and I was in New York. I brought my wife with me, which I paid for. So here I am having dinner with this brilliant startup gentleman, and he brings his wife who worked at Microsoft. So in Yiddish, they call that a Beshet moment, which is sort of ordained to be. And then he says, I'm going to hire you. I love you. And I became number one for 3 years, and I tripled this company. So I learned all about analytics and SaaS at that point. But that wasn't enough. So I had to pivot again. And then I pivoted and I started to work for companies in sales performance. They got bought by SAP. 70% of the work I had, companies were acquired. Fast forward, um, it burned again, and I said I need to start another company. But I didn't want to start a SaaS company and do the investment and spend 10 years in it. So I started a consulting company called Revenue Accelerators. At that point, it was called RAC, which were the three initials of my three children, Rory, Alex, and Chloe. So I started RAC, and I started doing early side hustle. I was doing side hustle before there was a side hustle. And at that time, I needed to learn more. So I went back in and I ended up getting a job at Teradata. And Teradata was sort of like IBM, and they were the giant lion in very advanced data science. And I said, that's it. I have to learn this. I have to become a data scientist. So I went there and I ended up becoming number one in a new account region. My whole life has been new account. It's not been easy. Um, and then I left that and said, I'm done. I want to just be an entrepreneur forever. So I started to grow Revenue Accelerators, and that then became the present day. So when I look back at my life, which I'm sorry it's so lengthy, from manufacturing and advanced manufacturing to technology, from startups to large companies, here I am. And then I found you, and I was so excited to do this podcast that I wanted to share my journey because it's not for everyone. But now today with AI, it's a million times faster. And if I would have had the beginning of AI 25 years ago, I wouldn't be here. I'd be racing cars somewhere in Europe and I'd be done with life. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Edward. Your story is so inspiring. It is absolutely amazing, and I admire your courage and your ambitions because it led you to such an exciting path and you brought so much value to all those companies. And just the mindset you are holding and applying to everything, it is commendable and really something to share with the world. That's why I was so happy to have you here today. And this is something we need to share with everybody who is listening to us and watching this interview.
Well, I
But now,
appreciate
thank you so much. And now let's talk a little bit about the strategic planning processes you
it.
implemented to guide your company rapid scaling. How did you prioritize and execute these strategies to ensure sustained growth?
Well, I'm an unusual character. I'm from New York City. My family's from Russia. I slept on the couch till I was 15. I lived in a two-bedroom apartment, the four of us. My parents went to work since I'm in first grade. So I'm what we call a hard knock entrepreneur, which most entrepreneurs that are highly successful come from that. There was no how do you scale a business 20, 30 years ago. It was just grow your business. And you grow your business the way everybody grew their business for the last hundreds of years. You have to go out and hustle it. You have to sell. You have to make the product and sell it. So when I started my first company, I ran sales, I ran marketing, I ran the clients, and I was putting together the factory with a partner at the time. But I was the face, I was the front of the room. And now that I learned many years later, and I'm a lot older, that the voice of the most successful salesperson, the voice of the person that could get in a car or a plane or a train or a boat and end up from where they start to the city where they want to be and walk in the door and meet a client potential and meet them at a director level or a VP level or a CEO level, that person is the bottom line person. That's the owner. And that's the person the client wants. And when that happens, you sell the most and you sell the best and you build deep relationships. Then you scale and you hire salespeople. But unfortunately, like Moore's Law, there's Pareto's rule. And 80% of your money and your gross come from 20% of your salespeople. So the learning lesson, even with AI, if you want to scale your business, the front voice of that business has to be the person that CXO wants to talk to in the account that can give you $1 million or $500,000. That's the founder. That's the founder CEO. Now, if you're shy and you're not a salesperson, that's a problem. But if you look at the Elon Musks and you look at the Bill Gates, who I met because I worked at Microsoft, I bumped into him. And if you look at Richard Branson and you look at the people that have led the tech world, they're not shy. They are the front face. That to me is the hidden secret to scaling, at least from my perspective.
I absolutely love this lesson, and that's true. If you are shy and you don't dare taking that step, it's really difficult to get where you would like to come. And with your expertise in Series A and B startups, which sales and marketing strategies were most instrumental, besides the ones you already mentioned, in driving your business results to such impressive heights? I want to know all of it. Can you reveal any innovative techniques or mindset that made a substantial impact?
Well, so you mentioned startups. So there's about 8,500 Series A and there's about 15,000 Series B. So there's 25,000 people that have money and are scaling of some type. This is some mathematics. I majored in chemical engineering in college. I'm not a math person. In fact, I used to have to take philosophy and English to keep my math grades up. But this is a mathematical conversation. So if there's 25,000 startups that want to scale, they all want to feed at the trough. They all want to make the money. I get that. In that mode, and in today, especially with AI, how many vendors are there out in the world? There's 3 million salespeople in the US alone. There's million plus vendors. India is putting out 4,000 startups a month. So today, when you look at scale, It's a mathematical equation, and I'm going to prove it with prima facie evidence in about a moment. So you have 25,000 startups. They could have 3, 4, 5, salespeople, whatever the number is. There's a couple 100,000 salespeople. How many companies are there in the Fortune 100? That's a quiz, right? That's a trick question. How many companies are there in the Fortune 2000? How many CEOs are in the Fortune 2000? You get the point. The algorithm of success and scale is a fixed algorithm where you can have a billion startups. You can't refabricate Pillsbury or MasterCard or Visa or Ford Motor Company. There's a limit to the Fortune 500. That's why we don't have the Fortune 28,000. So when you scale and you look at the mathematics, you have the many going to the few. Now put AI in, and now the number of vendors has gone exponentially out of control. Out of control. I have clients which I've pulled out of in parts of India or parts of Europe or parts of the Middle East. I'm in Dubai, but where they don't know how to sell, and they don't know how to sell in the US, but they have cool technology. So they're flooding into limited potential prospects. So if I'm scaling a business and I want to go from 2 million to 10 million to 50 to 100, I need to have a really good pipeline. I need to have an amazing differentiator. I need to have a very, very, very succinct value prop. I need to have some value engineering because nobody has any time or propensity to tell your story. But I need kick-ass people that could sell and tell the story. And it's hard to get them, very hard. And when you get them, it's hard to manage them. And when you get them and you manage them, they are in talking to executives that are getting inundated with too many vendors and too much AI. So scale to me today is a massive problem, but I don't know, 5 years ago, it was a challenge. 10 years ago, it was a goal. 15 years ago, it was a dream. Times have changed in my view.
That's true. And what you are sharing is absolutely invaluable. And now, when we already touched the area of challenges, what were some of the biggest obstacles you faced while scaling your startups, and how did you overcome them? Can you share a specific case where a major challenge was turned into an opportunity for growth?
Energy. Not energy and power. Human energy. Everybody that listens knows this for a fact. It's very hard to sell it, build it, ship it, manage it, pay it, collect it, scale it, hire it at the same time. So you have to hire people. And you hire more people, you need more sales. So the biggest challenge I had was we raised money out of Europe with I think George Shaded Machine was like number 7 or 8 in wealth in Europe. So we raised $500,000 in the early day, but then we had to come back and then build the factory. Okay. So I decided to split the company. I said, I'll do all the revenue in the front end and the client and the invention of the product, and I'll run the engineering and sales. And I had a partner that was going to do the factory and the finance. That's not unusual, but I was a highly effective seller, highly effective. So when I went out, I usually came back with business. That wasn't my problem. My problem was scaling it. So I figured out early, my biggest challenge was cash flow. So I figured out, which is not uncommon, I need to sell bigger deals, but not to bigger companies. I needed a win rate that went from 15% to 70%. I needed margin on deals that would be the highest in the industry. That was my problem. Now, if you're running a SaaS company, you need a lot of customers. My first business, I needed bigger deals. And I re-engineered that, came up with very exclusive work, and I started to sell larger and larger and larger. And that's how the company grew. And that's how we scaled. To do that today in manufacturing is very difficult because the Fortune 2000 is beat up. with everybody selling them, and they're going through their own industry 4.0 and their own digital transformation. We're in a tough world. But if you're a SaaS company and you want to scale, you need leadership that could sell. If you can't, then you're going to have to go and get it done. And I know this because I'm connected to some advisors and very close friends that are connected to the founder of Sequoia Capital. And they thinned out a very large percentage of their startups because they couldn't make it. Well, if Sequoia was seeing that, then the world is seeing it. So you need to be able to sell. That's how I scaled.
This game is definitely not for everybody, as you mentioned in the very beginning of our conversation, and I totally agree. It's getting increasingly difficult, and there are new differentiators coming into play. And speaking about them, how did artificial intelligence, technology, and innovation contribute to your ability to scale effectively? Were there any particular game-changing tools or platforms for your sales operations?
No. Now, in the first business, there wasn't. In the second business, we were leading Microsoft breaking development, early DCOM, ODBC. So we were deep into the technology, but there was no real platform. I mean, there was CRM, but that was about it. Revenue accelerators, there's so many tools. There's just too many tools. Great example, the MarTech, right? Marketing technology, because I worked at Eloqua. That was my most fun job, by the way. I needed to pivot into digital technology. So I bullied my way and got hired at Eloqua. And then I managed Amex and I brought in their largest deals and I was probably top 5%. So in those positions, we had marketing automation, we had platforms. So the growth wasn't necessarily in the tech and the tech platform. The growth was still in acquisition. Now with AI today, it's so much easier to do all of it, but it's also more competitive.
How do you think AI is impacting this game? Specifically AI because it is applied to everything today, from conversations to you name it. So how do you feel about it, and what do you think is the next step of development? Because human factor and, as you mentioned, leadership are still crucial. So how does it come to the balance in this game?
I don't know if I'm really qualified to answer that. So I'll use examples of people that are qualified to answer that. One would be the number one or the lead engineer at Google, gentleman in his 70s who quit. I think he quit about a year ago, perhaps. And he went online and he quit and he said, I'm leaving Google and I'm going to dedicate my life to AI because it will become the next way that we either have, world detonation and we all end up our lives, or we have an amazing life. And he quit. And on the way out, he was talking about this impact. And he's one example. There are many, many examples of it. You listen to the experts and you'll see stories. And this is something I don't make up. There's been 6 inventions, I believe, in the history of humankind in the last, I don't know, 200, 300, 400 years. I'm not going back into the Middle Ages, right? And if I get the order wrong, please, I'm trying to remember everything at the same moment. And I believe it started with the telegraph. The telegraph accelerated commerce like very, very quickly. That's how you open up the Midwest, the West in the U.S., etc. Then the telegraph, I believe, then there was the telephone. We all know what that did. And there was the automobile. We know what that did. And there was the airplane. We know what that did. And there's been only, I guess, 5 or 6 of these inventions that changed every human on this planet. AI, as it's written, look it up. AI, as it's written, was the next frontier. And they say it was anywhere from 1,000 to 100,000 times more powerful of human development change than anything, including the first 5 or 6 times 100,000. That's what it is. And when people say you have to be careful with it and you have to govern it, I agree with that. But this is like opening up a fission reactor and not controlling it. So I look at AI as, I mean, and then the electricity and the light bulb, of course, I have forgot that one too. But I look at AI as the greatest gift humankind has ever been gotten. And the interesting point, and I know you have an amazing audience, and I completely I'm into your executive audience because they know this, and they know this inside and out, that AI is only at the beginning and there's no magic with it. I mean, I was doing parallel processing, massive, multi-million dollar warehouses. All AI is just a place to put a lot of stuff and have it look up stuff and then correlate answers to your questions because it's got a lot of stuff. It does not think and say, I think what Ed really means is that he wants to go faster and get on a blue car and not a yellow car because Ed's mother happened to like blue and she wore it at Ed's bar mitzvah. AI is not that. AI is just massive correlation of information. It's at the cusp of the beginning. That's why people are screwing it up and how they're using it. And the danger of AI is not that it's going to take over the world. The danger it's going to take over commerce. How much longer can it be for a decision maker in a company that you want to sell to your software for $500,000 so you could scale your business? How much longer is it going to be until their self-buying journey of the B2B, B2C, where they're going to do 80, 85% of their engagement and involvement learning about your product? Go look it up. This is all over Harvard Business Review. It's all over McKinsey. How much longer is it going to be until they're like, hey, everything we get is AI driven. We don't even need a salesperson. Why are we even talking to a salesperson? Why don't we just talk to the digital agent and figure this out? And then when we need a vendor, we'll figure it out. Like we buy our houses, we buy our cars, we buy our food, we buy everything online. This is the danger of AI, that if I'm scaling a business and I'm going to hire 8 salespeople, you need to know this inside and out. And I think there's a better model for scale, but this is my perspective.
It's absolutely amazing that you mention those sides of AI, because usually we are talking only about the advantages and about the beauty of it. And I totally agree. It's absolutely amazing and it is going to change the future of humanity. But it is also very dependent on the set of values we represent as leaders, and it will impact which way the development is going and how it is going to change our reality. And there is a risk in it, but coming back to the risks applied to your journey, what strategies did you use to ensure risk mitigation during your growth journey? Could you share some about that?
Yes, I can. Let me clarify, because I make mistakes and I make mistakes a lot. I was Dale Carnegie, the inventor of sales. So you're talking about risk mitigation when I was starting a business, or you're talking about risk mitigation with AI in a business?
I'm talking about any risk mitigation you would like to mention for our listeners and viewers so that they can avoid those potential pitfalls and choose as straight path as possible.
Okay. So if there's risk, if risk is here, and that's at the top of the issue, then you reverse engineer and you go down, then what makes risk, right? So let's define it. So I have risk because I don't want to end up with an impact on my company, or I don't want to have cash flow issues, or I don't want to have HR issues, whatever the risk is, and you define it, you work downward. So I mitigated risk the way people have done this for like forever, for hundreds of years. I mitigated risk with cash flow. Cash flow is the currency of business, and pipeline fixes everything. And cash flow comes from pipeline. So the more cash you have, the more stuff you can fix. And that's just a simple equation. So cash flow mitigates risk. The way I used to mitigate risk in the businesses that I had, and the way I sell, is you have to make revenue your top priority. And in startups that I've worked with, I think I've sold about 90, 85, 90. At the end of the day, if you're selling enough and you have enough cash flow, you can fix everything. So I mitigated risk by making sure that I was the one in the front. I understand there are a million startups out there and not everybody can sell. But then again, I'm not a coder. I'm not an amazing engineer building software products. There's limits to what we have. But in commerce, you have to be able to go out and get it done. I find it a paradox. And sometimes it's actually very annoying to me that I get calls, and I appreciate the calls and the people that want to speak to me. I had a doctor reach out to me who's running a very well-funded business on a cancer research with AI. And he asked me if I've done any work in pharma. Now, my first reaction is, well, did you look at my LinkedIn profile? I guess not, because I helped bring together the first digital agent for RX and doctors in the world. I was working in conversation health. I got brought in by a brilliant gentleman and entrepreneur, and we had a $2 million agent that could literally help a doctor correlate and write script. AI came out, that company was gone in a month. That was $38 million went up. I have a client on my website. He didn't look at my website. That's using advanced mitochondria programming as the carrier into the brain to cure Parkinson's. So they were using the mitochondria like as a school bus to bring in what they needed to change. And they're like 50, 60% there. And they're funded by the NHS and Michael J. Fox Foundation. I have that on my website. I have a bunch of these. I have a client on my website that is raising money, has some money, really nice guy. And they're able to take an MRI. God forbid you have a real problem, you get an MRI. And if you have a lung problem, it's really nasty. The radiologist can only read, I don't know, maybe 3 of them could do 100 films a day. With AI, they could read 300. But more importantly, they could read what the radiologist can't see. So they could detect lung cancer. Now they could detect breast cancer. But he didn't see that either. And he wanted to know if I knew anything about healthcare. So I wanted to say to him, apparently either you don't care about what you're doing, so you didn't do your homework, or you're just looking for a vendor to sell for you. Now, it's being a little aggressive. But he's smart. He's smarter than me. He has more money than me. He's got a very successful business, more than me. And he's looking for somebody to sell for him. I found that unusual. So risk mitigation for him would be, you're going to put all your trust into people that can sell for you. They better be as smart as you. And that to me is a big gap. But then again, not everybody running a company can sell, but they can hire people that can hire the people to sell. So risk mitigation for me, and again, Emi, I am who I am, but you sell the deal, you make the money, you bring the cash flow in, and you run your business the way a fine-tuned military operation runs, you'll be okay. But nobody gives a darn about your amazing tech or your amazing perspective on things. It's just bottom line. I don't know where bottom line went away, to tell you the truth. I don't know why people in startups don't talk about, oh, by the way, we invented AI that will, grow trees overnight in the world and save the planet. Great. What's the bottom line to that? So that's how you mitigate risk for me. But then again, I'm not here to tell you that I run multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar companies. I'm not a Fortune executive. It's not who I am.
That is amazing, Edward. And I think what you just mentioned is crucial, because I've been through such situations myself as well. And I saw that when it is not relevant enough, then it shifts everything in a second. And then there is basically no way back. So it is so important that you mentioned that. And I would like to know, what is your single most important piece of advice for business owners to avoid failure when scaling their businesses? Besides what you just shared, there should be something what you would like to highlight, what you see is super important to share with others.
That's a really good question. So let's break it down into stuff that's easy. I like easy. So you can always hire someone that can run HR, and you can always hire someone to run ops, and you can always hire someone to do finance. You can always hire someone to do logistics. You can get great people for that. You can get great people for that. If you're going to scale your business, you're going to go to the VCs, and then you're going to do another round. So when you scale your business, you're going to go back for money, banks or VCs. So that's like in a forest hunting giant animals that could eat you. It's not for everybody. And what they want is bottom line. They want results, and they want financial covenants, and they want their money back. That's what they want. So my single biggest advice is you have to prove that if you scale and you go from 5 million to 20 to 50 to 100, forget unicorns. They're called unicorns because there's not many of them. So I'm not going to talk about unicorns. But if you're going to scale your business, you're going to prove you pay back, and you're going to prove your growth stability projections. That's based on growth. That's not based on, well, we have 12 trucks and we're going to have 80 trucks. Well, great. You're going to have 80 trucks. You're going to have a big e-commerce distribution situation. Great. Does that mean you're going to sell Walmart? Is that going to keep you fed? So my biggest advice is, I'll give you an analogy. I don't want to get too ethereal. So everybody likes movies, right? We all go to the movies. In fact, we love movies because there's stories. Mom and dad told us stories, bedtime. This is why we love movies. So I'm going to look at one movie in particular, and then I'm going to give you an answer that you'll remember. You'll never forget. So Leonardo DiCaprio, great actor, right? Titanic, right? Really successful guy. He did a movie called The Reverend, won an Oscar for it, in a tough year with a lot of great movies. And it was in the northern wilderness, I think in Canada, and the bear ate him. That was Bart the Bear. It was like one bear in the movies. Anyway, it was a brutal movie and living in brutal times. That was a 2-year movie. It took this guy like 2 years to get ready for this thing. I think it was 2 years. He had to go live in there. He had to go live in the cold. He had to jump into rivers in the freezing. He had to deal with, working with this bear. It was mechanically brutal, and he immersed in it so much that in movies people lose 100 pounds. In this case, it was one of the deepest immersions to get in character. He won an Oscar. I consider that similar in scale. You want to scale a business, then how far are you willing to go? Literally. And when stuff hits the fan and you're scaling, there are things that you can fix and there are things that you can't. And many things you could fix. The thing you can't fix easy is we need more money. We need more growth. We need more margin. We need more return on our money. Our NPV isn't good enough. Our investor is demanding this. South Korea announces they're going to go in now with the Ukraine. I'm very pro on that, but that could put us into another one of these World War III potentials. They drop now bombs that are not nuclear, but they take out a building in 2 seconds. That could open up and crash the stock market if they drop one of those in Paris. So with all that's going on in the world, you have to be aware of it. And the way that you get risk cut better is you're shielded, and you're shielded with your revenue and your customers. I know a lot of people are saying, Ed, that may be true, but if your technology is great, you're not going to sell. You could fix that. You could hire people and fix that. If you have too many competitors, then close your business. But that's the difference between the CEOs that are running this world and this planet because they get it. Why am I right? I've made millions, I've lost millions. Let me tell you why I'm right. I'm right because in the planet we live, in the millions of companies, there is a single currency or thread that they all live with, and that's shareholder value, right? You want to go sell any company that's public, shareholder value. That's how the CEOs run it. You have a little company, hey, how much money do we make? We have to have a bottom line. Why is it then, Emmy, that if every company in the world is focused on profit, which it is, and shareholder value, whether it's public or private, why is it nobody talks about this in the millions of startups that are trying to scale, where they're saying, well, the world focuses on shareholder value. So there's a couple of engineering firms that do value engineering. I'm probably number 5 in the country in value engineering. Why aren't there thousands of people that do value engineering? Then they use ROIs that are outdated. Why aren't there people talking every day that if you can't sell to a CXO, you got a real problem? And they want value. Why is it a hidden problem? All my salespeople can't sell to, the top of the company. It's unbelievable. So risk is crazy. Now with AI, you can sell to a CFO, which is my favorite target, because AI can write a whole brief and a cash flow for you and a P&L to have a sales call. Salespeople don't sell that way. So it's not the salespeople's problem. It's the startup founders thinking, wait a minute, I can grow, but I got to sell from the bottom up and the top down. And with AI, I can do it. So why are we not doing a better job? And I know I'm right because there's very few companies that get this right. The guy who got it right the most was Rob Bernstein at Coupa Software. And Coupa Software ended up getting flipped at a couple of billion. And Rob wrote a book called Value as a Service. And if you're listening to this, everybody in your company should buy this book. I'm connected to the CMO. I never had a chance to actually meet Rob. Value as a Service was a book and was one of the few CEOs that ever wrote anything like it, that said the future will be that you will sell $1 of a product or service and the customer will want $1 of value, and then they will buy more. That's what's happening now. So that's how you cut risk.
This is so incredibly impactful. What you just shared in a few minutes, it can change the path to success for so many business owners. I'm so grateful that you just took those golden nuggets and presented them in such a simple and clear way. And that's true. That is impossible to forget. So it is really amazing.
You're most kind. I'm not
I
that, I'm not that special. I'm just a guy, but you're most kind.
thank you. But I would love to keep this conversation going for days and learn more and more from you. However, we have to come to the end of this conversation. And my last question, but not the least, if there were something you would like to be warned about before experiencing it in your life or business, what would it be?
One thing.
One thing.
One thing. When I was growing my manufacturing company, I was warned by my financial advisor to put more money away, and I didn't listen to him because I just didn't want to listen to him. And I wish I loved my dad. My dad was my world, but my dad was a non-union plumber and is very quiet. I wish somebody would have come in and said to me, you need to insulate your business better. You need to insulate you better. You need to have your own attorney and not an attorney for your business. You need to be prepared for the worst every day because I'm older than you, Ed, and I've done this before. And let me tell you, there's men a lot smarter than you that have made and lost billions. You need to do that. And I didn't get that warning. And after 17 years, I ended up losing my business in a contractual problem between my ex-partner and my investor over greed, not over incompetence. And I lost 20 million overnight in what I would have made in those next 5, 6, 7 years. It took me a decade to recover. It changed me, and it's hard. And that's why I'm on this call. I have 3 children. I have 4 stepchildren. I have a second wife who's the love of my life. We've been married 23 years. We got divorced 15 years ago. Then I remarried my wife a second time. So my second wife I married twice. We're going to go to Europe and probably get married a third time just because it's something to do. And I wish I would have had better warning. And for $500, I would have gotten another lawyer to just cover my back. I'd be worth at least 100 million minimum, and I'd be running, things that I would love to do. So that's my big, big, big lesson. Your customers are important and your revenue is important, but trust no one except yourself. And I didn't do a good enough job on that.
This is so deep. Thank you so much for sharing it. It resonates so much with my own experience, and this is our chance to warn others and give this ecological, kind reminder so that they can just take care of the situation without having to go through all the pain and recover for a decade afterwards. I understand so well what it takes and how it feels, and I really appreciate that you shared this with us today. Edward, thank you so much for
Thank you so
being
much,
here.
too. You've been lovely, and this is great. I'll leave you on this note.
Thank you for joining us on Digital Transformation and AI for Humans. I'm Amy, and it was enriching to share this time with you. Remember, the core of any transformation lies in our human nature, how we think, feel, and connect with others. It is about enhancing our emotional intelligence, embracing a winning mindset, and leading with empathy and insight. Subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes where we uncover the latest trends in digital business and explore the human side of technology and leadership. Until next time, keep nurturing your mind, fostering your connections, and leading with heart.